here I am, this is me talking now, and she's not here. So what is how do you do this as a relative? It wasn't until I got up there at the first hospital, which was in Albany, where I was sitting there in a sort of a group meeting with other relatives, people, where their partners or wives, husbands were in this hospital, that I looked around and I got to know these people, and we were talking like a therapy session. Never been to anything like that. And I realized, okay, I'm not alone in this thing. And you talk to this guy, and he's lost both his jobs because he had two to sustain that family, and, he's breaking down. And there is the other, wife of a husband who's in there, and they are both losing their jobs. And they were still smiling and being just courageous Americans, and it was truly inspiring. But you realize you're not alone, and there's something here.
Hey, welcome back. I'm here today with Martin Burial over in Jutland, Denmark, and he is here to talk a bit about his experience of having a loved one who has ME. His partner has had ME for quite some time, and this has impacted him, obviously, tremendously. And he is doing a lot of incredible advocacy work. So, Martin, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so excited to talk to you about this today.
Thank you, Raelan. Thank you for letting me come on board in this incredible show. We've been following your channel for a while, and my partner, who's been ill for a while, has she's using your videos as encouragement when she's bedridden and when she can't get up, and she's looking at the recovery videos and she's saying, someday that's going to be me, so thank you for that. Thank you for that, Raelan. How do you go about living a life where you're suddenly out of nowhere controlled by this weird phenomenon, right? This weird illness, ME, right? And I will circle back to the project that I'm doing now, which is called the Gratitude Concert, which is a classical concert based on stories from lives with chronic illness. And I'm going to invite everyone watching your channel to share their stories with the concert if they want me to turn it into music. And try to create an interchanging thing between coming into the inevitably melancholy feeling that you must get when you remember your old strength, and you look at your arm and you don't have that right now, there is a melancholy in there. And we need to just, not dwell too much in that, but be in the courage of thinking about the power that we originally contain. And that's all human beings. Just because we don't have that strength anymore doesn't mean someone else doesn't. But everyone wants to contribute, right? Everyone wants to be powerful and to make an impact. I've been looking at your videos obviously through these last couple of years, and there is a similarity there. Let's say that with my girlfriend, coming in initially, she's a composer, an incredible singer, incredible songwriter, incredible producer, and she was her career was really starting up in her her career, and she was playing great concerts and collaborating with great people, and she was just starting to get more and more ill, right? And as I reckon a lot of people watching your show, it's the same thing. It just gets harder and harder and harder to do the things that you usually do. And one day you just cannot get up, or you collapse before an important meeting, an important concert, and there is nothing you can do about it. And then you go out to that public healthcare system, like you're from Canada, you have that too in Canada, right? And you expect them to be there for you and help you fix this, and absolutely nothing happens. At best, they take you off the stuff that you have through die-hard work learned can help you just stay afoot or stay afloat. They take that off, because they want that simple, clinical, scientific, thing, and they want the clean slate, but they are not necessarily there to take the full responsibility for doing that. And so you have a lot of people coming in there who get out of there way worse. And that was definitely our situation some 6 years ago. And we got out and we got some diagnoses, some testing done, pointing, like you and a lot of other people, to Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr virus, stuff like that. And she was collapsing more and more and more. And then one day I realized, okay, I'm going to lose her if we don't do something. And I called her mother, who's an incredible artist called Marit Bende-Norheim. And we just decided we're going to crowdfund a ton of money and get her to that clinic in Bad Aibling where they do that hypothermia treatment for Lyme disease, because this is just progressing too fast and no one wants to help us. And we crowdfunded, I think, $70,000 or something in a couple of months. And we went down there and they basically stopped these seizures from happening. And she was sort of back to a standard and not fully recovering sort of cognitive, her memory and stuff like that. And so we went on a new journey, going to the United States, going to Albany, up to Stram Center, coming down and living in Los Angeles for a couple of years. And that's sort of the long journey. And having at one point to come back to Denmark to sort of regroup, and hopefully we'll come back to Los Angeles, because the thing is, you can't get this customized sort of treatment that she needs here in Denmark or in these public healthcare system areas. It's just not possible. You need a more liberal healthcare system. And so we've been spending $300,000, something like that, in medical bills. But it's been worth it because he's been improving while we've been doing that sort of thing. And here's the breaking point. I come from a rock background, right? And classical music was the foundation of that band that I made called Lisa Stille. And now I was going into this solo thing still in modern music, say, right? We come to Los Angeles and we're in that town, we're getting the help we need and everything, but it's still so tough, right? So many things we can't do, so many opportunities that we miss out on. And that thing coming in as a partner, having to take care of your loved one full time and feeling like a victim in all of it, and one thing that just happened, Raelan, was I was cracking up. I was breaking down slowly, it was coming in on 4 years of this thing. I was starting to lose it. I was starting to drink too much. I was, something was off. And then this thing happened. I was walking down in the arts district in downtown LA. And I was walking because we lived right on the edge of Skid Row, right? And I don't know what happened there, but there was I was listening to some Spotify playlist, and I've been in modern music for a while now. And then suddenly out of the blue, Gustav Holst, do you know Gustav Holst, the composer, the British composer? Have you heard of him? No, okay, so he's a British composer. He did a suite called The Planets, right? And suddenly this track comes on, and it's called Jupiter. And it has this incredible piece in the middle of the track. After this, everybody ignore, don't listen to me, just go in and, listen to this track by Gustav Holst, Jupiter, in the middle, right there. And then I was going there, backbends and everything, and then this piece just came in, and I just felt my spine re-erect and my sort of blood coming back into my face and my limbs. and I could breathe again, and it was meeting or classical music coming in and the great stories coming in to meet me, on the bottom of things. And I realized I had to shed the rhythmic music or the modern music or my pursuit of the solo music and come back to the classical music, because really there is just not enough firepower in modern music, or the most of it, and especially not my career in it, to deal with this sort of thing. We need bigger guns, and classical music can do that. So I didn't look back. I went up to the last bookstore up close to Main Street, and I got all the scores I could carry, and I went back into the classical music, and that helped me. There was something here, something to explore and investigate, and I could come back to this thing that had real marrow, right? And there is also that aspect and that story for today, that there is that racing time, If she could just get a little bit of that strength back, before the grandkids arrive, So Hermes running to meet time. And so we're going through this experience in Los Angeles, and things are starting to look up. I'm beginning to go into investigating film music, of course, but we have to go back to Denmark because of our visa situation, and we need something more solid, right? And so we come back to Denmark, and this is something like a year before COVID, half a year before COVID happened. And we come back to Denmark, and his health, that was otherwise actually, she'd been pretty great, is just starting to decline again, And you think, hey, 3 years have passed. Maybe the healthcare system, there was a push for Lyme disease awareness and all that sort of stuff, multi-systemic illness. And you think, hey, let's give them another shot, And all that came out of that was just waste of life and, energy spent that we shouldn't have, spent on it. And we're in Copenhagen, and we're just trying to make ends meet and trying to desperately get the same sort of protocols. We started working with Andrew Heyman from out of Virginia, and him and Schumacher did this work on CIRS, right? And we came into that sort of thing, which is where we are now, and finding these pockets of relief, so to say, or where she's feeling better, but we really need to come back to a place where she can get this continuous treatment and, the bags that sustain her. And so this is all going on. But what I think is the extension of coming back to Denmark is just realizing that there is a huge conflict in the way that the different countries are dealing with illness, right? And you have a liberal healthcare system, low taxes in the States, so it's not good if you have a lot of people suffering sort of from basic stuff that could easily be cured just because they don't have the money, right? But then you have access to medicine if you have some of the more exotic stuff, right? And then you have Denmark, Canada, Germany, Norway, where, it's really good if you get a heart disease, then you're in great hands, right? We really couldn't get the help, and we just needed to focus on, buckle down and do something, sort of go all in again, if you know what I mean, right? Because she's a girl who's doing everything, there's not, there isn't anything that she's not been in on and investigating, like so many of the people watching your channel, including yourself, Raelan, right? And she's been off everything and she's been on everything, and one thing we have understood now is that she's walking a very thin line. She needs to be on this very precise regimen to make it and to be able to function. Her family have an estate in northern Jutland where they were able to build these new studios, and we could come into that temporarily and have this studio here and have her studio being half hospital, half studio, right? So she can work when she's sort of up and ready for it. And just buckle down and do this hardcore while we're here. And I would be able to work remote and that sort of stuff. And then my mother-in-law, talking to her, and she says, there's a lot of stuff going on here about what art can do for, in the realm of medicine. Maybe you should look into that. And so I started talking to people in the realm of culture here in the northern part of Denmark. And I had been thinking about this concert, because we are extremely privileged, We have these spaces here that we can work in, and we have gotten financial help from friends and family and people who were strangers to us who are now dear friends. And I've been thinking about, how do we thank those people? How do we give back to them? And I've been thinking about creating a concert where I would write them, tiny fractions of the concert would sort of belong to them, right? And that was what I could give them music. And then this idea just started rolling that, I had come sort of to the other side of a tremendous journey of anger and loss of control and all these things. And classical music had come back to me from underneath it all. I think, why not invite people into this process? Maybe it could be about more people than the people who helped us, right? Maybe we could, get to meet other people in the same situation. Maybe we could come into these communities, and maybe we could actually contribute to these things with stories. And this is where it all begins, really, right? You start to realize that art has a place in this whole thing, and I think we will come to realize a pretty important place. So I'm doing this out of two. There are two aspects to this. One is I want to take stories from lives with chronic illness and people suffering from disabilities, right? Or fighting disabilities, or maybe not fighting them, but living with them. And I also want to talk to artists, other composers, and invite them to start dealing with the universal stories, the things that maybe go beyond, your front yard. There is something about art when it deals with, stories. And that is that it comes into the realm of the mythical, right? If we take a story, let's say your story, Raelan, right? And you describe it in any way, but either way, it's you're a person, and you're walking through this, and this journey that has all these steps in it. And before you made this channel happen, it was just you and that story and the people involved and the stuff that happened to you. But real life isn't story, it's just happening to us, right? We're just walking through it, but as you make a channel and you take your story and put it out there, and you take other stories and bring them in, suddenly we see these stories being sort of, they transcend. We heave them up to a level where they become relatable. You're doing this by, doing this channel, right? It becomes relatable and universal in a way that we mimic, our expressions, the way that we talk about it, the way that these things become stories that we now talk about, My partner would come in and say, hey, have you seen this video? This one made it out, this story about this woman or this husband, and they made it out. And so it's the same thing in art, that we can take stories. And I did this for 15 days straight. Just 2 weeks ago, I was live streaming, and this is all on my YouTube channel. Every day I take a new story from a life with chronic illness or disability, and I transform it into a musical idea. And I do that in a very literal way. what happens when you do that is that the story that you engage, you create a process around it, right? And you transduce it into something else. And in doing that, we create a process. And that process is paramount to surviving this thing, right? I believe you had a video in just recently. Was it just a couple of days ago, maybe, or something? With was it Dr. Myhill? Is that her name? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
About Holocaust survivors, right? And surviving because you had something in the horizon, right? And that there is something there. I truly believe that. But what we can offer people as artists is taking their stories and transducing them into something else in a pretty literal way. And I still want them, Raelan. I still want the stories, and anybody out there seeing this thing, I still want your story and work with it and incorporate it into the composition. And then we'll just make noise for people fighting chronic illness to the best of my capacity. And people fighting or living with disability. And then we'll have the concert in March of 23 for string orchestra and organ here in Denmark in a concert hall called Musikkens Hus in Aalborg. And we will live stream that concert so that everyone in the world who wants to watch it can watch it. And people who've given me their stories, they will have their stories in that piece of music played by this orchestra. And I think I have an idea that could bring some sort of catharsis, maybe it could be some sort of experience that at least, if you're bedridden, right, and you can't get out into the world, then you can give your story to a stupid artist in Denmark, and while you are there, it will be transformed into musical motifs, and it will be part of this concert. And maybe that could do something for somebody, That's what I hope. And at least it's a way of showing that it's possible to take control. A little bit of control back. Because isn't that, Raelan, isn't that sort of a key word in this thing? That control is taken away from you, when we experience ME and CFS.
I know for me, it felt like virtually all of my control was taken away. And one of the things we talked about, many things from this I think are very powerful, but like I was sharing before our call, so many of us in this position just feel, invisible and ignored and not believed. And the illness gets a crappy name that nobody respects or nobody's heard of. And we're continually invalidated and told it's all in our head and that it's not happening, or we just need to push through it or try harder, or we're being lazy. So one of the many things that I think about what you're doing is that incredible, as it shines such a light on all of us, all of these people who are going through this. And, we're seen and we're believed, and it's validating our experience and empowering us and, bringing us out of the shadows, because it sort of, at least for me, felt like the world kept turning and I just sort of disappeared. Yeah. We just kind of get pushed into the cracks and everything else keeps going. And it always felt like such, I had so much rage really around it. It just felt like such an injustice, that, doctors dismiss you. It just, at every turn, it just feels like you no longer matter. And this, to me, is showing that people matter.
Oh, that's spot on, Raelan. Really spot on, and that's why it's, people suffering from ME sclerosis and a lot of other things are part of the millions missing, right? And there is so much stigma still going about in the world, and so many people who could get out, but how do I manage, bringing a wheelchair when sometimes I'm walking next to the wheelchair, because, there's so much stigma out there that are keeping people indoors. And that's why I began to use this term, people fighting from the shadows, right? And because it's sort of, I have this, do you know Deborah Rue?
No, I don't think so.
So she's doing this organization now called Billion Strong. And she's this this wonderful lady out of Virginia, and she's been working in tech inclusion and brand inclusion, and working for disability inclusion, basically. And to her, it's all one big sort of mass, right? Not all people with disabilities have chronic illness. A lot of people with chronic illness have disabilities, and there's a lot of stigma going on, which means that this is, as she says, of course, also this is grounded in identity, the stigma, right? Our story there, me being hidden from the world. How do I go about the things that have happened to me because I'm changed, right? I'm something else now, and in a world where people demand of us to stay the same, it can be extremely hard to turn on a plate and be what we need to be, which is why I guess, Raelan, you need to have a lot of focus on this whole brain retraining and the identity of the whole thing, and who are you now? And it's so stigmatized, and you can just look at the resistance that you experience going in and talking about, or people talking about brain retraining. And of course, if it comes from an ignorant point of view, as for instance, in Denmark, you have, ME is what they call a trash can diagnosis. You get stuffed in this basically mental hospital, and then you're forced to do gradual training, right? And take antidepressants. And that's it, basically. What's truly devastating about that is that the brain retraining and all the cognitive stuff and the stuff we can do to survive this thing, also just the cultural stuff, the artistic stuff we can do to survive this thing, gets diminished, because some people out there and some institutions out there are trying to force this agenda that it's basically a mental thing, and that you should just have a bit of retraining and the pacifier in your mouth and then go about your daily, it creates a wall where, of course, we need all the stuff we can do with our minds. We need every weapon in the arsenal, right? To deal with this thing. So one of the important things is here that there is an opportunity with Billion Strong, I think, to unite under one banner and not sort of try and divide ourselves up to things, Cirrhosis, fibromyalgia, a lot of cancers, ME, CFS, all of it. And all the rest, let's come together and create an organization that sort of just puts a pressure on the system, because that's what I would like for this thing to do. Doing, work with yourself is important to get through the day. Like what I do at the piano, or writing music, creating processes where we take control back. And we can do that even from our beds, and that's very important. But it cannot be on the cost of putting pressure on a broken healthcare system and all the stigma in the world, right? The responsibility is at and with the society, right? Because we're not a minority. People suffering from chronic illness or disability, and people like me who are relatives to someone who does, we are not a minority. And one of the things that is important in coming together is that we believe that our voices have value, right? Like what you're doing, Ray, is that you are giving these voices value, by putting them on your show and allowing people to talk and pointing lights to people fighting in the shadows, right?
And even to know that they're there, I always find it so insane to think that there are millions of us in the world going through, like for me, I felt all alone in my experience, and I had no idea. Now I have so many people reaching out saying, when I tell my story, it sounds like they could be telling it themselves. Like so many of us, there are differences and uniquenesses to our journey, of course, but there are far more similarities than there are differences. And many of us are going through alarmingly similar journeys, feeling all alone.
Do you feel like there is a progress? Do you feel like there is are we on the path for is this, because if this thing will insist on being a private matter, then maybe the future is sort of, maybe it's an organization for, because we're so many more than we realized in the beginning, I should say, right? You thought you were alone when you got ill. We absolutely thought we were alone for a long time. And then we realize, okay, there is maybe around 1 billion or something, people fighting from the shadows with voices. And I have a hard time believing in our democracies to solve this thing. I really do. And I have a hard time believing in the pharmaceutical industries, of course, solving these things. I truly believe, which is why it's so lucky. Sorry, I could tell you wanted to say something to that.
I was just thinking, I absolutely do think that there's progress, but I'm nodding as you're speaking because I'm in agreement with everything that you're saying. And I'm seeing a ton of progress, and so many people are recovering, and so many people are finding things that are working for them. And there's definitely themes and, things that are working for lots of people. It's not the same for everybody, but none of it is coming from conventional medicine. And I don't know if and when that will ever happen. But the beautiful thing about right now is that we are so connected and we are in this information age.
Yes.
So you don't have to, for better or worse, you don't have to be a doctor to be out sharing ideas for people to get their health back. It's just, we all can come together and put that information out, and then people, do with that what they will. But, I talk a lot about my mother, who also had this in the time where the internet didn't exist. So for her, recovery after being sent away from the doctor meant going to a library with no computers, and just looking through books and trying to figure out how to heal herself. So, yeah, I think we are all being forced to become experts on this condition. And, I just did another interview this week with an amazing woman named Julie, and she, was bedbound in a wheelchair and, was just thought she might be dying. And she finally had an appointment with her doctor, and she timed it. It was 4 minutes. And she said, I realized that this isn't where my answer is coming from. I've been relying on this system, and it stops now. And it was when she, empowered herself and turned inward. And I think there's two sides to it. It's both terrible and great that happens. It's unfortunate that when we're in the worst place of our life, that the responsibility is put on us to figure this out. But it's also an incredible thing. And it's very empowering to know that you do have this ability. And even though your doctor has nothing for you, it doesn't mean there's nothing for you.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Absolutely. And I think there needs to be such a mindset shift from those powers that be. Research is important. Obviously, we need to do genetic research and all the different types of traditional research when it comes to medicine. But, so many people are saying, and I feel the same, like, we need people out there doing essentially what me and so many other people are trying to do, but in a more scientific, rigorous way, because people are recovering. I can't keep up. I do this on the side from my full-time job. I've forever got a wait list of people out there who came back from hell and are fully living their lives. Like, we've got so much data. We just need someone, beyond a YouTube channel to be making use of all of us, all of us that are popping up all over the world and putting together and studying us, get out of the lab and studying the actual people who have made their way out of it and start to figure out what's happening and what can be useful for others. Because right now we're just putting this all out in an anecdotal way. Like, here's my story. This worked for me. I don't know if it will work for you, but I'm putting it out there. Just let's put information out there. Yeah. So just changing our whole paradigm of how we approach research and what we're looking at.
And that is why it's so wonderful that you do the stuff that you do, because you put a face on trust. You can trust Raelan. She's doing these things, and she's taking stories and putting them on a podium and showing how people can heal from the stuff that your doctor and your accountant and your mother told you couldn't heal from, but you could, And my God, we need to clone you, I think.
People can still continue to follow your project. And if they want to get involved, if they want to learn more, how can people connect with you, or what's the best way for people to do that?
Thank you for asking. So there is the YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/c/Martin Burial, and subscribe to that channel, because I'll be vlogging the entire process from there. And then if people you out there want to share your story with me and allow me to turn it into music and use it in the concert, then you can write my story at thegratitudeconcert.com. So I don't know, Raelan, maybe you can put it somewhere in the description if I'm lucky. But the YouTube channel, and maybe also the Facebook page, you can get in touch with me on Facebook. And and that's just mine, facebook.com, mburial. And you can write me, contact at Martin Burial, or write me at my story at the Gratitude Concert. Many ways to get in touch with me. And also, I want to say that everyone will be anonymous. I will not use anybody's names unless they are public figures. And if you have any questions, people are so welcome to, just write me and ask away.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin, for all that you're doing. I'm sending so much love to you and your partner. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us here today. It really means the world to me.
Thank you so much, Raelan. I appreciate all the work that you do, and 5 minutes, a little bit more, I'm sorry about that, in the spotlight here to share the project and the Gratitude Concert. And I hope you find power to carry on doing what you do, because it's amazing. It really is.
I'm trying to now wrap up always and remember to thank all of the people watching who contribute with the super thanks button below the video on YouTube. I know people watching are typically coming from a place of financial hardship, so that really comes from the heart, and it really does mean the world to me, and it helps me to work towards my goal of doing this, supporting all of you, all of us, our community, full-time one day. So thank you to all of you for that. And just for being the amazing people that you are. Our community is some of the most amazing, incredible, empathic, compassionate people I've ever met. Well-informed. We are health experts by this point, but I know it can be incredibly challenging. And as always, I'd like just to finish off by sending out big hugs to you. And I see you. You are not alone. I know things can feel like they're never going to change, but things can, and they do. And I truly believe that you will get there, and that you are more powerful and capable than even you know. So hang in there. Keep doing what you're doing, and I believe you will get there. So thank you again, Martin. Thank you again to all of you. Big hugs, and I will see you all in the next video.